You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And, oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to Friday. Friday all the live long day. Y'all, it's the end of the week, and we got a sound effect for that. Hit it, man. Friday! Yes, it is. Friday, we like to call it. So welcome to the end of the week. We're glad you're with us. We're going to have a full show, but before I say much more, JP's on the board. Hey, man, how you doing?
I'm great. How about you on this Friday?
I am good. I am Friday-ish.
Yep. No shortage of things to talk about today.
No, Lord God, we got a show and a half, but yeah, it's a target-rich environment right now for a conservative talk show. All right, hey, we got. Let me tell you what all we got on tap. So it's going to be full up, y'all, full up. So a little earlier than we would normally have guests on, coming up in about 20 minutes. We'll have John Rogers. He's a pollster with the Signal Analytics Group, just talking through where the public sentiment is right now. First 100 days of Trump, entering into the next election cycle. Even though we just got through with one, we're going to enter into the next election cycle like now. All of it. John Rogers, Signal Analytics, he'll be on with us coming up at the halfway point of the first hour. And then starting the very top of the second hour, John Wall, chairman of the Alabama Republican Party, vice president for the southern region of the National Republican Party. He'll be on talking at length about where we stand right now with election cycles, what Republicans are looking at, what the agendas feel like. And oh, by the way, how about this? What does it mean for states to have strong governors? We'll talk about that too. And then number three, JP on sports coming up top of the third hour. I mean, like there's no end to the content on the show. But yeah, JP on sports coming up at the beginning of hour number three. And then there's still a triple dipper. So hit it, man.
The Triple Dipper. 3 stories you've got to know.
That's right, the Triple Dipper, 3 stories, 3 themes, if you will, that you got to know as we run today's show. First out the gate, the great race. Y'all, the great race is upon us. This is going to be an election season like you've never seen before at the state level. Now, granted, we just had a crazy wackadoo presidential election cycle. I feel like we just got over it. Really, we did. But what's about to start in the state of Alabama and in multiple other states is going to be unlike anything we've had perhaps in an entire generation. In Alabama, every single statewide office except for treasurer is going to be open, no incumbent. That's a free-for-all right there. And we may have an empty U.S. Senate seat that is open for people to have a primary on. We'll talk about that. The great race, that's number 1 on the Triple Dipper. Number 2, going to cook up a little home fries. You know, we got to look around sometimes, see what's happening in our own backyard and talk to it, because what happens around you sometimes means more than what happens in D.C. So, yep, we're going to cook up a batch of home fries is number 2 on the Triple Dipper. And then number 3, if I can get there, we're going to talk about running out the clock, because I'll be honest with you, that's what it looks like liberal judges and the liberals in general are trying to do to the Trump agenda. They're just going to keep pressing and delaying and delaying and pressing until they hopefully run out the clock. That's their only plan right now. Don't let it happen. Run out the clock. Number 3 on the Triple Dipper. All right, well, let me jump on into the Rightside Way opening monologue, and I'll remind you guys that attorney Stan McDonald is the partner at the law firm of Wilmer & Lee who supports the Rightside Way monologue daily. He's your sponsor. He's been practicing for 30 years, and I will tell you more about Stan McDonald here in just a few minutes. All right, I'm going to talk right now about not just governor races, but about what we want as a governor. And I'm going to use a phrase that I've used before, and I want you guys to hear it, and I want you to burn it into your minds, all right? Because yesterday a story broke on various news outlets around the state of Alabama that U.S. Senator and former NCAA football coach Tommy Tuberville is running for governor. The sources sound credible. Tuberville himself says he's still praying it through. I believe that he's going to run. I also believe that Alabama is long overdue, y'all, for a governor who inspires, who leads, who motivates, who speaks out, who will kickstart the next level of our potential and not just sit in the office for a few years. Somebody who has a conservative street cred already and a willingness to buck the system, fight the deep state, govern like a true statesman. In short, what we need, in my opinion, is somebody to rally around, somebody we can be proud of, somebody who gets us, somebody who works for us, somebody who doesn't just show up at the ribbon cutting. And I'll be honest with you, I think we deserve that. We need that as a state and as a nation. All right, and I got a name for that kind of candidate. This is what I'm saying. I want you to burn it into your mind. I coined it several years ago during the 2012 presidential cycle. I met with former Texas Governor Rick Perry when he was running for president that year. I told him I wanted a God-fearing gunslinger in the executive office. A God-fearing gunslinger, that's what we're looking for. Somebody who is not faint of heart. Somebody who can care about people and direct traffic with the authority of their position all at the same time. Somebody who operates decisively while also listening to wise and carefully selected counsel. Someone who's actually hard to outthink because they've already studied the issues themselves deeply, but they'll still hear advice from others. Somebody who will admit mistakes and tell you what it will take to ensure they never happen again. We haven't had that in the governor's office in far too long. Far, far too long. That's right, a God-fearing gunslinger for governor. And I don't think it's too much to ask. I mean, bring me a Wyatt Earp who wants to run for governor. I'm for it. Bring me a God-fearing gunslinger to serve as the chief executive of this state, and I'll get behind that all day long. And I do not mean, by the way, just right here in Sweet Home, Alabama. See, right now, as I speak, there are 36 governor's offices around the nation that are all looking at being up for election in 2026. This could actually be the sea change that conservatives have been looking for. Already, we have conservatives like Senator Marsha Blackburn running for governor in Tennessee, Representative Andy Biggs in Arizona, Representative Byron Donalds in Florida, former presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy in Ohio, and maybe Representative Elise Stefanik running for governor of New York. And that's just a few of them. There are multiple conservatives right now stepping into the fray, and we need them to. We need them to. You know, and I recognize, too, that God has given me this platform. It's an honor I do not take lightly. And I also recognize He has given me a particular set of experiences. Me personally, I've got experiences honed by a long career of service in things like leading troops, serving on the front lines of a war zone, practicing law, in counseling and ministry, and also as an elected state lawmaker. Those experiences are not for nothing, if you know what I mean. So as I considered my time with you today, and as the usual preparations for this monologue were underway, I found myself revisiting the past several years, rethinking the means by which our current governor responded to different events, or for that matter, didn't respond. And a list of what I would like to see in a governor coming up began to fully gel in my mind. You see, our state and our nation, over the past 3 years, we have been through a hellacious time. We've had the pandemic, we've had government overreach that shut down our schools, our economy, our lives. We had the Biden social agenda that put DEI and critical race theory into every government office and the halls of academia. We had 40-year inflation highs, we had 40-year military recruiting lows. At the state level, we saw an increase in our gas taxes, and the bulk of all COVID relief dollars that came to this state went to just feed the state government, while the private sector languished. How many times, by the way, in all of that, how many times did you hear our current governor speak out or lead in a meaningful way during any of it? So, what do I want to hear from a governor in a crisis management situation? What do I want to see in the day-to-day functions of a state's chief executive? What kind of character and behavior and principles and faith do I want to see in a God-fearing gunslinger from my state or any state? How should I feel, by the way, after I've heard that person speak to the matters at hand? Well, here I'm going to give you sort of a rundown of what I'd like to see. You see, in a crisis, I'd like a leader who will stand up quickly in the presence of the people they were elected to lead, and to start off saying with steely-eyed confidence to the people of the state, we will get through this. We will be here tomorrow. I want a leader who will say things like, I don't know it all, but there's people in my administration who do, but if they don't, I'll find those that can join the team. I want the kind of governor who would not long suffer any fool who would let turf wars or complacency impede our state's progress. I want a governor who at least once a week would meet with the press and answer questions candidly and direct their attention to the good, the bad, and the ugly because it's not about appearances or poll numbers. It's about transparency. I want a governor, the kind of governor who would make known that, quote, following the science is only one aspect of decision-making and crisis management, and that they would always consider things like culture, faith, liberty, and law playing into every option on the table. I want the kind of governor that would make clear that government is not the end-all, be-all, and call for, incentivize, and galvanize support and cooperation of the private sector to bring its own resources and capabilities into the walls of government. I want the kind of governor, by the way, that would refuse to allow politics to play into decisions that affect things like life, limb, or property. Politics would not be a part of any discussion or decisions that affect education and economy. See, that kind of governor would openly say they did not get elected to get reelected and that doing right ain't hard. The kind of governor I'm talking about would mandate that government hiring would freeze and that no expansion of government would ever be tolerated while the private sector is struggling. That kind of governor that I'm talking about, that God-fearing gunslinger, would direct that things like tax cuts, sales tax holidays, hiring and retention incentives for small businesses would be the hallmarks of their administration's efforts to grow the economy, not just to grow government. The kind of governor that I'm talking about, by the way, a God-fearing gunslinger, would make known that a violation of civil liberties would never be tolerated and would make the preservation of our individual and corporate rights a high priority. The kind of governor that I'm talking about would be one who walks in their faith, but would not shy from a fight. You won't hear religious platitudes from this person. Instead, you'll hear and see and watch as a person of faith actually lives out their example of a believer. And by the way, is not afraid to say so. Knowing that if they stand for everything, they stand for nothing. That kind of governor would make clear that they were not elected to be a poll taker or to waver in the winds of fads and fashions. They would be a rock of consistency where principles and faith are their actual guide. And by the way, the kind of governor that I'm talking about, that God-fearing gunslinger, is also approachable. That kind of governor would walk among the people, eat at their restaurants, frequent their parks, visit their churches, hug their necks, shake their hands, and if necessary, go visit them at the hospital. It is not enough just to speak confidently. A good leader must walk out under fire and exude confidence to those they lead. Over the years, y'all, I've watched folks who've exhibited these traits. I have served with leaders who inspired me in both military and civilian roles. And none of the traits that I've just cited are imaginary. They're real. And when people are in crisis or just need someone to follow, those kind of qualities I just cited are the kind of things we're looking for. So what do I want for a governor from my state, for any state? What does a God-fearing gunslinger look like? Well, I want a leader who can and will do all of the things I just described, who would look back on the last few years and tell me honestly, literally tell me honestly, that our current governor did not meet those standards and they will do it differently. I don't see any problem with saying that. You show me a governor who will do all those things, and I will be their champion. I'll donate funds, knock on doors, and extol their virtues. So here's my question for you. Is there a God-fearing gunslinger in our future? God Almighty, I hope so, because we need him for such a time as this, in our state, in every state. God-fearing gunslinger for governor. That's a wrap for the Rightside Way. Well, there you have it. Go ahead and burn that phrase in. By the way, that is a Rightside ruffian phrase right there. What do you want for a governor? We want somebody who's going to be visible, somebody who's going to stand up, somebody's going to defend our interests and fight for our best case scenarios. We want a God-fearing gunslinger for governor. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid conservative, just plain right. Saving the world one soundbite at a time. Several text messages are already in. The number is 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text it or call it. Same number for both. I got to tell you about attorney Stan McDonald, though, because the Right Side Way monologue that you listen to every day, sponsored for you by attorney Stan McDonald, partner at the law firm of Wilmer and Lee. Y'all, Stan is a 30-year veteran in the practice of law, and he's not only the kind of guy, I know this for a fact, he's not only the kind of guy who can advocate and fight for your legal needs, but y'all, Stan McDonald has been an absolute warrior in the trenches on the policies, the politics that right side ruffians care about, literally for years. He's an OG ruffian. So yeah, attorney Stan McDonald, he has represented his clients in literally thousands of real estate transactions. He knows how to represent you in every local, state, and federal court. I like to say if Stan McDonald's on your side, you will have no greater friend. Likewise, your adversaries would have no greater foe. So, you want to get in touch with him? I'm going to tell you how. I'm going to give you his phone number. You ready? Stan McDonald. The law firm is Wilmer and Lee. He's an America First family man, and his number is 256-479-3020. That's Stan McDonald, 256-479-3020. Tell him you heard about it on Right Side Radio. Okay, brace yourselves. No representation made. The quality legal service reform is ready to quality service for I lost it.
You were on a roll, but then you lost it.
No representation is made that the quality of legal services be performed is greater than the quality of legal services performed by other lawyers.
That was a perfect 10. You didn't even mess it up at all.
I didn't. I just, wow. Okay. Okay. All right. Yeah, we got plenty on tap for you. And I'll just, I'll get a few text messages here real quickly. Flip from Priceville says, has Governor Ivey said that she won't run for re-election? She's term limited, man. Flip, she is term limited. She cannot run again if she wanted to or not. State law says 2 terms, and she's there. So yeah, she's out. Plus, I don't know that she could. Just to be honest, I mean, no one has ever said her health is so bad, but it's just kind of, it's well known that she is does not have the stamina she used to have. Let's put it that way.
I mean, there's a reason she's like hiding from the media constantly. I can remember the last time I saw her in public.
Yeah. John from Huntsville says, Phil, spectacular monologue, and I can't wait for Tuberville to run for governor and win. He says, by the way, JP, did you watch the NFL draft last night? Because I got the first 4 picks correct in my online draft contest, but I think that was all I got right.
I did watch
John,
it.
Did you?
It was pretty predictable draft, though, so.
I predict
yeah,
it's part of JP on Sports.
You know, you may have a magic ball over there, because it is.
What else we got here? TL from Huntsville. Well-stated, Senator. That monologue is one that should go in your book. Thank you, sir. I will, you know what? I'll make that happen.
By the way, Jeff from Indiana thinks you just gave the perfect stump speech for yourself to run for governor. So there's that.
Okay. All right. Wow. No, thank you, Jeff. TL also said, by the way, says, can we put that in the legislative job description for governor? Yeah, maybe we ought to just go ahead and script that out, put it in state code, and say this is required. I like it. And then Ken from Harvest, you know what? That's kind of an insulting one, so I'm not sure that I'm going to go down that road. We'll come back to it. All right. Phil Williams, Right Side Radio. Y'all stay tuned. Coming up next, John Rogers with Signal Analytics. We'll be right back. to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down to some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Goes from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean down to that loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn. Straight across the border to what we now get to call once again Fort Benning. And oh, by the way, big old patches in North Georgia and Mississippi thrown in just for good measure. Hey, by the way, I got a real quick touch on a text. So Ken from Harvest, I'm apologizing to you now because I was trying to read your text while the music was playing and then didn't know what it was saying, so I chose not to read it. Now I realize all he's doing is saying it'll definitely be an election, an interesting election cycle with the Riverboat Gambler, Coach Tuberville, getting in there. Did you know that was his, as a God-fearing gunslinger, he says.
I did not know that was his nickname, though.
Yeah, that's before your time, I guess.
My first college football season I remember was 2009, so yeah.
Okay. Yeah. He was known as Tuberville, known as the Riverboat Gambler because he was willing to take the trick plays, he was willing to call the hard plays, and he was willing to do things that other coaches might not have done, including like go for fourth down, that kind of stuff, take the gamble. All right, let me go to the phone. So somebody who's been on the show multiple times, he's a friend of the show. He's definitely a friend to myself and the lovely Charlene. John Rogers has been a figure in Alabama politics for a number of years, and he is now working full-time for the last couple of years with Signal Analytics, which is a national polling firm that has a great reputation based out of Washington, D.C. And he's on the phone right now. John Rogers, how are you doing, my friend?
Bill Williams, I'm doing great, and Tommy Tuberville definitely had the Riverboat Gambler. I remember that nickname, that moniker, for one. Yeah,
I think he could almost poll that one in Alabama, and it would get caught up, But then again, since gambling is always a divisive issue in Alabama, maybe he doesn't want that right now.
Touche.
Well, hey, man, listen, Signal Analytics, you guys are all over the place now. I know your founder, Brent Buchanan, it all started here in Alabama, but you guys see things all over the place. And so I guess I want to ask you, kind of broad brush right now, we're at the almost at the 100-day mark on the Trump administration. What are you guys seeing, hearing, sensing in terms of public sentiment on how things have gone?
Yeah, I think one thing that stands out, and we do national polling all the time. In our latest national poll, congressional Democrats had a net image of -15. So they were 15 points underwater.
Wow.
55% of voters across the country have an unfavorable view of congressional Democrats. Only 40% have a favorable view. And if you look at swing voters, 60% of swing voters, Phil, have an unfavorable view of congressional Democrats. Only 28% have a favorable view of congressional Democrats. And so that's been kind of the baseline reality for, all of this, the first 100 days of the second Trump administration. Congressional Democrats are at the most unpopular that they have ever been in our national polling. And we've been doing this monthly national poll for about 3.5 years now.
Wow.
And so aside from everything else, aside from Doge, aside from Elon and what's going on there, or Tesla, or immigration, or everything else, congressional Democrats are incredibly unpopular. And you can see in D.C. that they are just kind of flailing to find a message that works, right? And they tried to unite with the federal bureaucrats and say, oh, my gosh, Elon is coming in here with a hatchet, and isn't this just a terrible thing that the Trump administration is trying to save taxpayer dollars? That didn't work.
Not at
right?
all. No.
Elon, in our polling, Elon's image has taken a little bit of a dive, but he has just gotten hammered by the media nonstop for the last 4 or 5 months. But Doge itself, is pretty much, the country's fairly evenly split over Doge. But if you ask the question, do you basically, do you support efforts to cut the size of the federal government and reduce federal spending? Guess what? Majority of American voters are on board with that.
Yeah. They're always in favor of it until it cuts their part. But but nonetheless, generally speaking, that's the sentiment that I feel like I get, is that folks are not dissatisfied with the idea of downsizing a bloated government. So that's good to hear.
Right. And even on immigration, we'll get asked sometimes like, oh, well, this case with the guy, Garcia, is that hurting Trump when it comes to immigration? The baseline fact of it is the American voters, a majority of American voters trust Trump on immigration, and they trust the Republican Party on immigration more than they trust Democrats. And that was, immigration was really the issue that was central, that along with inflation, to Trump winning in November over Kamala Harris. And, the ins and outs of like a specific immigration and deportation case, people may have different views on that, but still immigration is a winning issue for the Trump administration. And you could see that in, what they choose to talk about. I mean, J.D. Vance is fine talking about immigration, and even fine talking about this case with Garcia, because the White House, they understand that this is a really good issue for them.
Is there anything that I heard this morning, just during my morning drive time, and I want to say it was on Fox, and it was Dana Perino saying that a recent poll she had reviewed said that Trump's numbers had slipped in certain categories, but overall was still very favorable. And I think one of the categories was the economy. Is there any kind of lack of sentiment right now, favorable sentiment on the economy, or is there anything else that's hurting him that we're not really seeing right now?
You do see. So we asked a top priority question where we ask people what they feel like the top priority should be for Congress. And inflation and the economy has risen over the last 3 months. And so, if you go all the way back to January at the beginning of the year, 28% of American voters, it was still the top issue overall, but 28% said that inflation and the economy was their top priority. That has steadily gone up from 28% up to 35% now. So I do think that, there are some voters that are starting to get nervous about the state of the economy.
Yeah.
I think that the tariff situation, if you went back a week ago, that was something that really was making some voters nervous and anxious. And I think that, you saw the stock market reflect that. And then I think you saw the administration kind of respond to that and say, hey, we're going to focus on China, and then we're going to focus on having discussions and renegotiations with countries on a case-by-case basis, outside of China.
Well, so let me ask you, to the extent you can answer it, so two issues that I've seen coming up that seem to be the playbook, if you will, for the Democrats. One is run out the clock, delay everything, use the courts to delay everything you can, and hopefully run out the clock on the Trump administration's ability to work. The other is try and selectively take out members of the cabinet. Right now, it appears that since they didn't get anywhere with Musk and Doge, that the idea is to just hammer Pete Hegseth. Is there any polling that indicates the effectiveness of the attacks by the judiciary or the effectiveness of the attack on the entity of Secretary of Defense?
We have not polled the DOD question in Hegseth recently. We have a poll coming up where we'll ask that question. But on the judiciary, we have polled that before and fairly recently. And for the most part, it's just kind of a wash, right? That, Republicans are kind of where you would expect them to be. Democrats are where you would expect them to be. And then independents, are just kind of split where, if you ask, do you feel like, federal judges are too activist in how they approach the law from the bench, you'll get a chunk of independents who agree with you on that and a chunk of independents who disagree with you on that. So I don't think that that's an issue that really is going to help the Democrats that much. Now, that also depends on, how disciplined the president is, and if he continues to be, somewhat disciplined in his rhetoric, I think that that will not allow that to become an issue. And then if he were much more, kind of sustained in his attacks and maybe a little bit more just very open in his rhetoric, that could possibly, hinder that could hurt him, I think, a little bit with independents.
So what you're saying is mean tweets at 3 a.m. could or could not go in his favor.
Right. I mean, I think what Democrats are – some Democratic consultants will tell you privately that what they think the party should do is just stand back. I mean, like I had a Democratic consultant tell me this recently. He said, yeah, our strategy, what we're telling our candidates is basically let the Trump administration flood the zone, let them do as much as they can, and their expectation is that the Trump administration is going to overreach, right, and that they'll make mistakes and they'll go too far, and then Democrats are going to try to step in and capitalize. But what's interesting is that's not a uniform position on the left, right? Like AOC and Bernie, they are not taking that position at all. They're out there on the, try to make America a socialist tour. And they're probably turning off as many voters as they're attracting to their cause.
So the new acronym for their hats is MAST, Make America Socialist Tour. All right.
I do think AOC, I would not be surprised if she decided to run for president. And she, I would put her at a probably tier one of the candidates, of having a decent shot at getting the nomination. I mean, if it's her, if it's Kamala Harris, and if it's Gretchen Whitmer, and maybe Gavin Newsom runs, AOC would be a pretty formidable candidate, I think, in that primary. And of course, she would be a great candidate to run against in the general.
That's almost scary to even hypothesize about AOC running for president. I find that to be both entertaining and fearful all at the same time. Well, hey man, listen. In the next few minutes, we've got just a little bit left. Let me turn your attention to state. I mean, you spent a lot of your time coming up through various aspects of state politics here in the state of Alabama. You've seen the ins, the outs. You've worked the politics. You do the polls. We've got maybe a generational moment where I think every statewide office, with the exception of treasurer in Alabama, and maybe even adding in one U.S. Senate seat, are all going to be open with no incumbent. It's going to be a free-for-all. What are you thinking, hearing about Alabama, or for that matter, states in general, about where state politics are moving?
Well, you're right. It is. I think it could be a sort of a generational election in Alabama if all these statewide races are open. And so, there's a lot of scuttlebutt that Senator Tuberville may decide to run for governor, and we'll see if he does pull the trigger on that. And I think if he did, he would. I think most political observers would say he's going to be the favorite. It probably. You would have some other people that would run in the primary against him, but he's a popular figure in the state. He's got good relationships with the Trump administration. I don't know that a Trump endorsement would necessarily be a fait accompli, but the president could well decide to get involved in a primary if Senator Tuberville decided to run for governor. But that's a decision obviously he's going to have to make, and that's a very different job from being one of 100 senators. If he did decide to do that, that obviously opens a U.S. Senate seat, and those don't come open that often.
Yeah.
And I expect that you would have a number of different people that would put their hats in the ring, and it would be I think it would be a very competitive primary.
I think it definitely would. I can think of several names right now. I mean, the question is, if Tuberville runs for governor, will Will Ainsworth run for governor against that heavy of a name ID, or will he do something else, or will he do nothing at all? There's that one. Steve Marshall is still out there, our current Attorney General, who's got a great reputation and could well run for the U.S. Senate. And then, I feel like there's probably going to be somebody from the business community. Somebody's going to step in with their, personal wealth and say, I'm going to fund my own race. But what do you think in terms of, and I got about a minute, are we trending towards a more populist, conservative, Trump-style state-level politics, or do you think that we will see more traditional status quo politics?
The party has definitely become more populist. That's just undeniable, right? And that's both at the national and at the state level. But the issues that you confront at the federal level are a little different than the issues that you confront at the state level or even at the local level, right? And there is no doubt that Republican primary voters have wanted the party, especially at the national level, to take a more populist bent. And, you can understand why, because I think a lot of, especially social conservatives, they looked at the last 15 or 20 years and they say, well, Wall Street's gotten kind of the upper hand in the Republican coalition, but we're the ones actually providing the votes, and we want you to prioritize socially conservative things that matter to social conservatives. And it's at the national, at the national level, the Republican Party has shifted more towards a populist direction.
Yeah.
And at the state and local level, I think that still can apply, but people also want to make sure that they've got competent leaders who are going to be able to effectively govern at the local level.
Well, we'll see where it plays out, but I think it's going to be a wild one, man. I think that with all these open seats, you're going to have people who've never been in politics running for statewide. I think you're going to have people who are trying to move from one statewide to another, and I think you're going to have some names that have been around a long time suddenly facing people who have a more populist but yet unknown background to deal with, and it's going to be interesting to watch where the money falls out, too, for that matter. But, John, I got to leave it there, man. I appreciate you, as always, making time. Y'all do great work at Signal, and we'll have you on again sometime soon.
Phil, great to be on with you as always.
Thanks, John. All right, listen, I got to take a break. I ran long just to make sure I get as much as I could of my time with John Rogers. John Rogers, Signal Analytics. That's spelled Cygnal, Signal Analytics. They do great work. They got a website full of information if you ever want to check it out. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. Well, I got to tell you, the text lines are wide open. I want your input on this. What are you looking for? I'm calling it a God-fearing gunslinger. That's what I want for a governor. I would want that for any state, by the way. And, can you imagine what it'd be like to have like 50 DeSantises out there? Can you imagine? Every state going just 90-0, just like fighting back against the woke, pushing Democrats off to the side, and literally fighting for conservative principles like small government and lower taxation and strong defense. And just come on, amazing. So the end result is we got a time before us right now where we can claim that. And I'm going to tell you right now, I really believe that Alabama not only deserves that, but Alabama is that. We just haven't had that in our governor's office in a while. Me personally, I would look back and think that the last governor that I saw that had real moxie in the governor's office and sort of had a command presence, if you will, was Governor Riley. And Governor Riley, there were some who couldn't stand him and some who loved him. But I will say this, the man was still in charge. I sat in meetings with him and more than once, saw him sort of had that command presence from the head of the conference table. He knew how to talk the issues. I have a friend who worked for him personally who told me that they would come into work at like 7:30 in the morning. Before they got there, the governor already knew all the facts of the day before they briefed him on it. He had already read like 4 papers and gotten all the hot sheets and had gone through everything, and they sat down for a 7:30 a.m. meeting to a governor who was already asking them questions about things they didn't know yet. So I love that, and I think we deserve that as a state because we are indeed a red state. Think about what's happened in this state right here. You're talking about the state where the 4th congressional district had the highest per capita vote for Trump of any congressional district in the entire nation. You're talking about the state that has a Republican supermajority in its legislature. A state where the military is much loved and where the cost of living is great. It's about time to have a governor who steps up to the plate every single day and just says it like it is and gets her done. More on this coming up. John Wall, chairman of the Alabama Republican Party. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. We'll be right back.
You're listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 2 on a Friday afternoon. We're glad you're with us. Don't forget, text lines are open, 833-687-4448. That's 833-68-RIGHT. Text it or call it, same number for both. I'll be catching up with your text messages here just a little bit. But right now, what I want to do is I want to turn my attention back to the phones. We got another guest coming on with us. No stranger to this show, John Wall is the chairman of the Alabama Republican Party. He is also, by the way, a vice president for the RNC, the Republican National Committee for the Southern Region. And he is on the phone right now. John Wall, how are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's good to be on the show.
Well, it's good to have you back, and I appreciate it. And then listen, you and I had a conversation recently, kind of covered the gamut of, wow, this is going to be a crazy season coming up, state politics, but it's really not just Alabama. I mean, we're watching, especially governor's races, getting a lot of notoriety and conservative attention nationwide.
No, look, that's absolutely right. In Alabama, it looks like we're going to have it looks like Tommy Tuberville is probably going to pull that trigger on the governor's race, which is really going to make things interesting, both there with an open governor's race, but then also opening up the U.S. Senate race. And like we were talking about the other night, literally every single constitutional office in the state of Alabama will be an open seat except for state treasurer. Yeah. So quite the dynamic year for primaries here in Alabama. And then, yes, outside of that, you got Vivek Ramaswamy looking at the governor's race in Ohio. You have Senator Blackburn up in Tennessee, coming back from the Senate in Tennessee. Yeah. And I think a lot of this goes back to the realization of how much, how many of the conservative policies we talk about and how it affects people's lives, how much of this it's not just a federal level. These are state issues, and the state has a lot of power and a lot of weight over them. And I think people are starting to realize that and realize the need for conservative leadership at the state level.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's also sort of a sense of we feel like we deserve that too. I mean, you watch what happens when they did everything they could to keep Trump out of office at the national level, and then you realize, wait a minute, he's not the only chief executive in this nation. There's 50 other seats called governors, and they have just as much authority at the state level as a president does at the national level. Why would we not want someone who will come down here and speak for us and walk among us, so to speak, and be out there on the issues, and for that matter, even raise our state profile?
Oh, look, that's exactly right. And I think the whole country kind of took note of that with Ron DeSantis. Whether you're a Ron DeSantis fan or not, it is undeniable the fact that he proved what a conservative governor could do. And that if you have somebody who's willing to stand up and say, no, we're just not going to accept wokeness, we're not going to accept these flawed policies, and we're actually going to stand up and do what's right, not only do you get national attention, not only does the base love you, but you end up winning a swing state by 20 points. That's what people are ready for. The American people are ready for someone who's willing to stand up and fight for them. And if you do it, you won't just pick up Republicans. You'll win with independents and common sense Democrats as well.
No, I think that's exactly right. I do. Let me ask you this. So you're the did I say it correctly? I always get this messed up. The vice president of the RNC for the Southern Region. Is that correct?
That's right. So I'm a vice chair of the RNC, and there's 4 regions. So I have the best of the 4 regions. I know I'm partial, but the Southern region is the best, and I am proud to have that title. And really, for me, this goes to standing up for the values of the Southern region, which is conservative. It's boldness. It's standing up to protect our children from these woke policies, fighting back against so many things at the national level, and I love that I'm able to kind of represent Alabama in the Southern region with RNC leadership.
Absolutely. Well, let me ask you this. So Alabama, like you just said a moment ago, almost like probably 99% of the constitutional offices, statewide offices, and potentially a U.S. Senate race all open, not just like up for election, but we're talking like open. There's no incumbent. Is any other state in your region seeing the same thing, or are we unique in that regard?
I mean, there's several states that have a lot of openings, but no, Alabama is definitely unique in that full spectrum. And like I was saying, not even just the constitutional office, but add an open Senate seat to that. Right now there are no other states, not even in the southern region. I don't think there's any other states in the country that have the complete lack of incumbency that Alabama is going to have in 2026.
Well, you know what that means, too, is a potential for a sea change in politics. There's going to be a lot of new faces. There's going to be people who have never run for office before suddenly running for a statewide office. And I would imagine at the party, and folks don't even realize, y'all are the gatekeepers. People have to qualify for office, and then they can actually be challenged. And then you guys have dealt with it in recent years where you have to actually hold hearings to decide whether the bylaws would allow that person to run. I bet you're going to see a little bit of that coming up in this madness of a primary we're about to have.
You know, I'm sure we will, and I embrace that. I think we have to do that. The party has not always been as strong on that as we are now. You know, we once Democrats saw Republicans take such a stronghold here in 2010, there were a lot of Democrats who just switched parties or chose to run as a Republican instead of running as a Democrat. And that's where these rules kind of grew out of, and said, no, hold up. If you've been a Democrat, if you voted as a Democrat, if you've endorsed Democrats, run as a Democrat, or maybe given money to a Democrat candidate, you can't just come in and run as a Republican.
Yeah.
That's not how the system is supposed to work. Republicans are supposed to run as Republicans. Democrats are supposed to run as Democrats. And I think it's incredibly important, like in states like Alabama, to have that. And to put these rules into place, especially when we don't have closed primaries, and we have Democrats voting in the Republican primary, it makes it all the more important that we make sure the candidates who run are actually Republicans.
Well, and let me ask you too. And by the way, I'm so glad to hear you say that. But I've also seen that to be the case. Let me ask you before we move on. I'm going to touch on the University of Alabama before we finish our time. But before I get there, though, I want to ask you about something else, because I also feel like whoever comes in as governor next is sitting there poised, I mean, literally potentially poised for success, because Alabama seems to have a lot of things firing on all cylinders. We've got this, Redstone Arsenal growing out with the FBI, potentially Space Command. We've got economic indicators that are strong. We've got, projects down at Austell Boat Yards that are doing really cool down in Mobile. The Port of Mobile is expanding. I mean, there's a lot of things that are happening that make Alabama to kind of in a position to poise for success. What are your thoughts on Alabama sort of rising up? And I mentioned earlier the profile of the state.
Oh, look, 100%. And economically, I think we're headed in that direction. We're seeing the growth. And a lot of that is Alabama has a tremendous, and once again, I know I'm biased, but I cannot say enough about the people of Alabama. Common sense, hardworking, moral values, just across the board. And I think that's so important. And industries look for that when they're coming to a state.
Yeah.
And then that's an important part of this. I also think it's nice to have somebody in the White House who likes your state. We've definitely got more than our fair share of Donald Trump here in Alabama. And I think we're going to continue over the next 4 years to be rewarded for that. But on top of that, I think you're right. I think Alabama is poised to take a greater role on the national stage when it comes to conservative politics. And this has been something that's been my heart and a very major target and a priority for me since being elected as state party chairman. I want to raise Alabama's profile. I want to see us, if you think of a state that embodies the values of the Republican Party, it's hard to find a state that's better than Alabama.
Yeah.
And I want to see us grab hold of that. And I'm proud of some of the accomplishments we've had with the state party, bringing the first ever presidential primary debate to Alabama.
Yep.
Bringing in Donald Trump twice, bringing in Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, some of these high profile. And I want to continue that trend because at the end of the day, I think you're right. Alabama deserves more credit. I want to help see them get it. And I want to take it, whether it's economically, whether it's, values or policy. I think I really, we talked about Florida a minute ago. I want to see Alabama taking that charge and being the state that other states follow when it comes to conservative common sense policies.
Yes.
There's no reason we should be passing bills from other states. Let's think them up here. Let's get them enacted here, and let's show the country what real freedom-loving constitutionally based government looks like.
Man, I'm loving it. You couldn't see it. It's because it's radio, but I was actually waving my hands in the air while you were saying some of that. Well, listen. Can I get an amen? Hey, listen, man. Let me ask you. A couple minutes left here, but big doings is the fact that University of Alabama, even though I'm an Auburn fan, University of Alabama has scored a major coup, and the President of the United States is coming to give a commencement address here very soon, and yet there are people that are pretty frumpy about this. Give me your thoughts on it.
Yeah, this has been something that's been really to me it highlights the amount of insanity coming out of the left today. Because you're right, this is a great opportunity for the University of Alabama, for the people of Alabama, for our state, and especially for our students. The fact that you have a sitting president, the commander-in-chief, the most powerful man in the world, is coming to your state, to your campus, and you have people who are whining about it and say he shouldn't be coming. I think this is craziness. Whether it would be a Democrat president, Republican president, Joe Biden, Barack Obama, having the sitting president come should not be attacked. And I'm making a challenge to people. Come, listen. Even if you're protesting, listen to the speech. Give them a chance, because in America we believe in open debate and we believe in hearing people. Yeah. And the attempt to censor him from coming to a college campus, I think, shows just how far the Democrats have gone.
Well, I would hope there's not going to be any wavering at all from the university, and I haven't sensed any. I don't know if you have, but I hope they're remaining solidly behind the idea of him being the commencement speaker.
No, I think they definitely are. I've been really proud of them. And this actually, kind of a little bit of a background here. This actually originated with Donald Trump wanted to get out to several campuses for commencement, and he actually chose the University of Alabama.
Oh wow! Nice.
As one of his three. And so, reached out to the university, and their government affairs team has done an amazing job working with the Trump administration to make this happen and give students that opportunity to have this historic event. This doesn't happen very often.
No.
Very few college students get to have the sitting president partake in their commencement ceremonies, and it's a great honor.
Well, it is. It's a great honor for them and for the state as a whole. But well, listen, John Wall, chairman of the Alabama Republican Party, vice president of the RNC for the southern states, thank you again for what you do. Thank you for your time, and we'll talk soon.
I'll look forward to it. It's always good to be on the show.
Thanks, man. See you. All right, great interview. Got to take a break. Let's take it right now. I'll come back and start getting some text messages and, catch up on a little bit of home fries. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just saving the world one soundbite at a time. I got to catch up on some text messages. John from Huntsville is texting in a couple times, actually. He said, hey, John Rogers was amazing. And then he said, spot on comments by John Wall. Well, thank you, John. That's John texting about two other guys named John. And apparently there's a John thing going on.
Yeah, I think he just likes the name John.
Who's this texting line? Oh, Stephen from Huntsville says, if I can, is this, I know this guy. I do know this guy. Okay, so, this is Stephen from Huntsville. This is one of my college roommates, by the way. No, he has no stories about me, none at all. There are none he could tell. There are none, and by the way, if there were, I'd have some on him too. There's all that I'm going to say of that. Stephen, glad you're in the mix, man. And he says, by the way, if I can say I love Tommy Tuberville, you can say you're happy about Trump going to Tuscaloosa. I can say I'm happy about Trump going to Tuscaloosa.
See, that wasn't that hard. I still won't say those two words, though.
You can say them, man.
Nah.
I'll tell you what, if coming up this fall, if we win the Iron Bowl, you got to say it. It's way out there. You got time to brace yourself. You got time to study up for it.
Don't think I can do it.
Okay, here we go. Shag Nasty, the atheist, checking in. Shag Nasty says, are we sure he's not a DEI hire? What is he talking? Oh, Kash Patel? Okay. He said, you're totally off topic, Shag. I don't know where we are right now. And he says ugly things. He thinks Kash Patel looks like he's always got gas. Okay. And he says, are you sure he's not a DEI hire? Well, Shag, at least you acknowledge that you understand what DEI hires are now. There's that. We got a long text from Doug, just giving us a praise report. Doug, I'm glad things are going well, man. Very glad. Chris from Starrett, Alabama says, afternoon, Phil. Assuming Mr. T, that's Tuberville, wins the governor's race, Mr. T.
Coach T.
That's right. That's Coach T to you.
Yeah.
Mr. T.
Senator Coach T.
Mr. T runs for governor. Give me your vote, fool. Vote for me, fool.
I don't think he'll play that edge on.
I pity if you don't vote for me, you fool. Anyway, now I got myself tickled. All right. Chris from Starrett, Alabama says, afternoon, Phil. Assuming that Mr. T wins the governor's race, he'll be reelected for a second term. What would it take for you to... Oh, I'm not running. Thank you very much, man. Appreciate you.
He says he'll run as your lieutenant governor.
Yeah. Thank you, man. Appreciate you. Marshall from Dubai says, hey, Phil, I got the news all the way over here, and it's amazing that we have 2 judges arrested for helping illegal aliens. Yeah, I know. It really is. Said, I'm hearing about another judge in Maryland demanding the return of an illegal from El Salvador. Here's how I'd handle this. This was him saying it. Here's how Marshall from Dubai would handle this if he were charged. Ready? He says, if a judge or a lawmaker wants these people back, then we send that lawmaker or judge to their place. See, Phil, I'm a problem solver here. Oh, to take their place, he says. I've also been left unsupervised yet again. Keep up the good work. Marshall, we're glad you're in the mix, brother. Keep texting in, keep listening in. Matthew from Washington State. Loving it. Matthew from Washington says, hey, Phil and JP, Matthew in Washington, happy Friday. Hope you guys have a great weekend. You too, man. You too out there on the left coast. Hang in there. Stay in the fight, brother. The day is coming when you'll be back here in good old sweet home Alabama. Devin from Brownsboro says McQueen for governor. McQueen? As in Boomer McQueen?
I don't know.
That's the only McQueen that I know.
The only McQueen I know is Lightning McQueen. So.
That was of your generation.
Oh, dude. I had Lightning McQueen toys, and yes. I think Cars was the first movie I ever went to in theaters.
Oh, was it really?
Yeah, it was.
Cars is a classic.
Yeah, of course. I mean, Cars is a classic.
The idea that Larry the Cable Guy can be a car is pretty cool.
Mater.
And Devin from Brownsboro clarifying he was talking about from Boomer and McQueen. Yes, I knew that to be true. All right, listen, we got plenty on tap. We're going to come right back in a minute. You know the deal. Every once in a while, I look around and I realize, there's a few key things happening in our own backyard. Kind of important doings, big doings. And we're going to talk about them briefly just to cover some ground because we got to. We're going to wrap up this topic of the great race, I'm calling it, and then talk about a little bit of home fries here and around in our own areas. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Whew. I mean, it goes from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I mean, it goes from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean, it goes all the way down to that lovely little town in the village on the plains we call Auburn, and straight across the border from there to God's country at Fort Benning. I mean to say even big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. All right, we're halfway through the show on a Friday afternoon. So I gotta just listen, a few tidying up comments, if you will, on this first dipper that we've talked through quite a bit, actually, on the great race, I'm calling it. That's where we are. And I almost feel like, too, that it's like we just caught our breath, if you will, from the last election cycle, the presidential. I mean, it was gangbusters. Think about it. How nuts was that presidential cycle? All the lawfare going on, all of the open attacks going on, Biden completely falling apart, the Democrat Party then crumbling in a self-implosion mass of hysteria as they tried to get Kamala Harris to look like somebody that could actually be presidential, and she just couldn't rise to the occasion. And then at the same time, Trump is under one attack after the other, literally being thrown into this courtroom, thrown into that courtroom, then speaking in front of the masses, and then going to court the next day in another state. It was like, how does he do all this? And he won huge. And I'll be honest, even as a politico myself, while I was jazzed up by the results, I was also kind of exhausted. And so the thing to watch for here is voter exhaustion. And we're about to go through a primary season that is going to be some next level real. Like, oh, wow. You're going to have, in Alabama alone, you're going to have a multitude of candidates. All of the state legislature, all of it, the entire state legislature is up for re-election all at one time. That's 140 people. And then you've got every statewide office in the state of Alabama, with the exception of treasurer, but every other, I'm talking auditor, secretary of state, lieutenant governor, all of them are actually open seats, no incumbent running. That means it's going to be a mass primary. That means no one's going to walk away because they think that person's an incumbent and they got the strength and we're not going to. No, it's an open seat. An open seat rarely comes along in the political world, especially in mass like this. And then you've got that going on next door in Tennessee. So some of y'all that lap borders and you may be watching local news in Tennessee or local news in Georgia, depending on where you are. You may be seeing advertisements and hearing advertisements that cross borders. You're like, wait a minute, who's running where? Do not get voter exhausted. All right. Do not become complacent. Don't let here's what I'm asking you. We have an opportunity. I'm telling you this in advance. It starts next month, by the way. If you didn't know it, it starts next month. Because the laws of the state say you cannot raise money or officially kick off that campaign until you are 1 year out from the primary. That'll be May 26th. So May 26th, everything gets live. You've got some people out there going, yeah, I'm going to run. But all it is like, yeah, I'm going to run. They don't have their official campaign committees. They don't have any fundraising events. They don't have any advertisement yet because they can't do that. And also, it's going to start fast. Because with open seats, people are trying to clear house. They want to announce their candidacy to hopefully clear the field of some people that, are potential also-rans that would just drain their resources. And then you're going to have some who are going to jump in who've never done politics before, and they're going to be learning as they go, and it's going to be wild. It's going to be the OK Corral, man. Bullets are going to be flying. So you as the voter, I'm just going to tell you, I'm going to do everything I can to make sure y'all are high information voters. But you got to want to be a high information voter. Right now, Governor Ivey, and I talk about her in her official capacity. I am ready for her to be done. In her personal capacity, I'm still very fond of her, all right? I know her personally. I think the world of her. She's a good person. She's just not able to rise to the challenge of being the governor of the state now, in my opinion. If she is, she's sure not showing it. And I think she is probably a couple of years past, how do I say this? A couple of years past when she should have served. if that makes sense.
You can say she's a couple years past her prime. I think that's.
It's more than that. It's more like her health is so much of a question. Her energy is so much of a question. Her inability to speak out to the issues except when she has to is too much of a question. She's not leading the nation on anything right now. She's following what the legislature does instead of really giving it to them. And it's like her staff is running the show. That's what's happening right now. Let's be honest.
I think that's a fair assessment.
It is a fair assessment.
And if it wasn't, I wish she would do something to make people not think that. But when she's not out and about, and I don't know.
Yeah, well, you make a great point. If that's not the case, then why would you let it be the case?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You prove otherwise.
So I'm ready to see something different. But that being said, y'all, what I started to say a minute ago was she got reelected on nothing. Think back to the last campaign. Have you ever seen a sitting incumbent Republican governor have that many people primary her in one season? That should tell you a lot. I mean, think back to who we had. I mean, we had Tim James. We had Lindy Blanchard. We had Dean Odle. I mean, we had, I'm trying to think. I know there was somebody else I'm forgetting right now, but the reality is she had a full primary field. I mean, she had real money thrown at her. Tim James and Lindy Blanchard especially had real money in their race. And if you're doing a great job and you're the incumbent, you just don't rear up that many primary challengers. All she did, she avoided. She didn't do a single debate. She didn't do hardly any major presentations. And she had one commercial anybody can remember where all she said was, "There's no step too high for a high stepper." That's all she said. She didn't say, "Here's my platform." She didn't say, "Here's what I've accomplished." She just said, "There's no step too high for a high stepper." What does that even mean?
I couldn't tell you, no.
And I'm concerned about how many people voted for that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, there's look at places like Huntsville, which is booming economically. And yeah, I feel like also, I mean, too, Mobile, like across the board, I feel like most Alabamians are content. So maybe Kay Ivey, a lot of stuff was attributed to her that, stuff that Tommy Battle may be doing in Huntsville in that region may got attributed to Ivey. And I think a lot of voters were like, I don't really see anything to be too upset about. Why wouldn't I vote for Ivey?
Yeah.
And but they weren't as involved in the primary, and so I think that attributes a lot to it. Of maybe Ivey got credit for a lot of stuff that wasn't necessarily her own doing. But I think that's mainly my assessment. I don't think there was enough people that were upset about something. I think, yeah, why wouldn't I just vote for it?
And in my opinion, she didn't do a great job during COVID either. And COVID was a part of what she was running on the aftermath of COVID. And apparently that was okay. I mean, we're talking about, remember, I don't know if you remember this or not, but now granted, Alabama did open up sooner than a lot of states, but also way behind Florida and others. And so we had success stories on our southern border with Florida, and yet we weren't doing it here. But you may recall that she was asked at one point about the vaccines and the pandemic, and her response was, "Why don't you go ask the ones who aren't getting the shots?"
I remember that, and I remember being kind of shocked by that, because at the time I wasn't as involved in or paying much attention to local politics. I remember seeing that, and I was like, I thought she was a conservative.
I was on, allegedly, the governor's task force on COVID response. I like to say there was no tasking for the force. We would have conference calls where we were told what she was going to do 10 minutes before she did it. And what she always did was she turned the call over to Scott Harris, the state health officer. And just, wow. Here's the bottom line. Be a high information voter. That's what I'm asking you. Be a high information voter. And if you're a conservative, you're a right side ruffian, look for the one that will do that. And then I'll say this too. Look for the most viable one who will do that. It's real easy to get lost in the, well, I like that guy, and he's got zero money, no credibility, and no one's ever heard of him before, but you like him because you met him at a function. Be careful of that. Find the candidate who has the ability to carry the day all the way through to the election and will do the things that right side ruffians care about. And that's what I'm saying. Just Yeah.
And John Wall made a great point. And when you live in a state like Alabama with a supermajority, a lot of people put an R by their name that aren't really conservative Republicans.
Jeez, yes.
So it's so important to actually pay attention in the primaries because that's where the Democrats will sneak in. They can't go up as a D against an R and win in Alabama. So they got to go in and put on a disguise of a Republican when they're not. So
yeah. Hey, man, let's do a little bit of because we're going to do JP on sports after the top of the hour. Let me do this. I've got a sound effect for this. We like to call this little bit of section I'll do because we've already covered parts of it. Home fries. Oh, cook them up, man. Cooking up some home fries. Here's one for you. Just so you know, Yellowhammer has a story that came out last week. I did not recall this, but there was a brand new Inspector General's report from the Air Force that points out unequivocally that the Biden administration used politics like we all didn't know this, in the idea of moving Space Command away from Huntsville, Redstone Arsenal, to Colorado. Purely political. U.S. Department of Defense Inspector General recently publicly released a report on the process that led up to that 2023 decision. The Inspector General's report reveals once again that President Trump was right in 21, that the U.S. Space Command headquarters should be at Redstone Arsenal based on merit and what is best for national security, said Representative Dale Strong. The report exposes how the Biden administration bypassed the selection process and on all the recommendations from the Air Force and top defense leaders in order to further a political agenda. And that's exactly what happened. Congressman Adderholt actually said, too, based on strategic value, existing infrastructure, and quality of life, North Alabama won. And so here's the bottom line. Home fries. We're talking about the FBI a lot right now, which I'll get into in a minute. But I think you're staring at an anytime now decision on Space Command coming to Alabama. In fact, there's an article that came out in Space Policy Online. I hold it in my calloused former paratrooper hands. After the DOD Inspector General's report, it's widely believed that was laying the foundation for the decision we're about to have, that Space Command's coming here. I think the only thing they're waiting on right now is it's going to be Trump's Air Force Secretary who is going to pen the decision, put ink to it. And he is due to be confirmed any day now. So I just checked during the last break, and the Air Force Secretary nomination process is moving through. He's come out of committee, and he is due to go before the final vote on the floor here very soon. Once he's in, I think one of the first orders of business will be to restore some order to the Space Command question. And you'll be seeing another announcement in the very near future. Redstone Arsenal is going to be packed. They're going to have to annex part of the county to keep it growing.
Yeah, it's going to be bursting at the seams.
I say that euphemistically. I don't want them to annex part of the county. But it's actually huge. They got a lot of land out there.
Yeah, it's big.
All right, so there's that in terms of home fries. And then I've got a piece. Where did it go here? Hang on a second. Kash Patel. Kash Patel, Alabama Daily News, points out that FBI Director Kash Patel made good on his promise to Senators Katie Britt and Tuberville to come and do a tour of Redstone Arsenal. And he did that, was it yesterday or the day before? Day before, wasn't it?
2 days ago, yeah.
2 days ago. So Patel joined Britt and Tuberville for a visit on the FBI facilities, and this is what he said, by the way. He said, I want to let America know part of the move to get FBI agents and intel analysts and support staff out in the field is going to come right through Redstone Arsenal. He said, we're going to put more and more and more people here on a permanent basis from the FBI. And by the way, I'm going to bet, I said this yesterday, I think during Butters and Lee, I'm going to bet that there are people right now in D.C. working at the FBI headquarters who are kind of freaking out of the idea of moving to Alabama. Like, I don't know. I mean, what's it like down there? I mean, it's all like Dogpatch, Alabama. What are we going to do? And they're going to come down here and they're going to fall in love with it. I bet you.
I would agree with that.
The weather is milder. You've got quality of life. You've got all the infrastructure in the world. You got basically, if you love the outdoors, you're in the right place for that. You're just a short drive from the beach. And then you've got what I would call a very solid quality work environment with Redstone, Huntsville, Madison County, North Alabama, the Alabama in general. What do you think?
I would agree with that. I think the same for folks in Colorado who may be coming here from Space Command. Yeah.
Hey, don't you have a sound effect like that? I think you do, don't you? Hallelujah. Give me that. Hallelujah. Thank you. Thank you very much. What else have I got here? On the governor's races, I will point out that Marsha Blackburn, running in Tennessee, has received some serious endorsements from what I would call local and state leadership. So for my Tennessee listeners out there, I pulled this off the Tennessean. The former GOP Nashville chairman, which is probably one of the biggest GOP chapters in the state of Tennessee, has now fully endorsed Marsha Blackburn for governor. I believe she has, I know I've said this and it should be in this article right now, but since it's an endorsement letter, probably not. Marsha Blackburn, I believe, has one Republican congressman who's looking at running against her. But right now, much like Tommy Tuberville, she's coming in with the greater name ID. She's already run statewide races to be a U.S. senator in Tennessee, and she is coming in to be probably the top-tier candidate for governor in the state of Tennessee in this next election cycle. It's going to be interesting to watch. Tuberville and Blackburn both have a good relationship in D.C., and I believe they're both part of the conservative Senate leadership. And so they're going to be, border to border here, and that's going to be interesting to watch how the southern states. And if we have, I think Tate Reeves, I could be wrong, but I'm not sure if Tate Reeves leaves in Mississippi's governor in this cycle. But I know Brian Kemp is leaving. And then Byron Donalds is, I think, one of the lead candidates in Florida because DeSantis is term limited out. So if we had Byron Donalds and then Tate Reeves stays, and then right now I'd say Tuberville's the top candidate if he jumps in, and then Blackburn.
Tate Reeves can run for one more term. Okay,
and I bet he will.
Yeah.
Unless a U.S. Senate seat comes up. Have I got to take a break? I just realized what time it was. I'm just sitting here just on a roll, man.
Yeah, I'm letting you go.
I'm cooking up some home fries. All right, I'm sorry. We'll take a break. We'll come right back and have a short segment, and then we'll go to the top of the hour and do some JP on sports. Phil Williams, it's Friday, man. I got Friday on the brain. Is it over yet? Is it Friday? We'll be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. I was not watching the clock, so I ran so long that I've got about enough time to get a couple of text messages, and we're going to the next break. So forgive me for that. Time management. If I was a coach right now, clock management. Come on, Williams, clock management.
You'd be sitting there letting the clock run out, watching.
I just like watching the clock and do my timeout. Okay. Adam from Athens says, folks from Colorado are just going to be mad they can't legally get high. Oh, Colorado.
Well, if they're on, and you said this off the air, if they're in Space Command, I would hope they're not doing that anymore.
Yeah, if they're in Space Command, they're still having to. They can't piss hot. That'd be bad. That's real bad. Jeff from Indiana checking in. He says, Phil, speaking of Governor Ivey, I just got to say she was to the governorship what Joe Biden was to the presidency. Say it all. Yeah, well, not quite. All right, but let's just say she weren't real active towards the end. And by the way, I knew her back in her prime too. Man, she was literally just like a woman on fire. I mean, she could give great speeches and very dynamic. And then Ronnie from Athens says you're talking about Biden. Okay. And then John from Huntsville says, hey, JP, what do you call an eagle who goes to war?
An eagle in war.
Jeez, that's so bad.
That's
I
what
feel so bad for you. Coming up next, JP on sports. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back.
listening live to Rightside Radio with Phil Williams. It's hard to go wrong when you're on the right side. Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right.
Alabama and Tennessee's syndicated news talk leader, Rightside Radio. Phil Williams here live in the Rightside studios. Man, we got the local, the state, the national, covering down on all the issues. And oh yeah, like the dude just said, solid, conservative, and just plain right. Well, welcome to hour number 3 on a Friday. Y'all, we're going to get you all the way to go home time on this Friday afternoon. In the meantime, you know what the deal is. On Friday afternoons, we got to take a break from politics, take a break from culture wars. We got to take a break from some of that madness and just dive on into a little JP on sports. Because if you're not familiar, JP is a guru of all things sports, and I mean all sports things. So that being said, I want to remind you guys, by the way, that Inspire Advisors is the new sponsor of the JP on Sports segment every Friday. I'll tell you more about Inspire Advisors just a little bit, but right now, we got a sound effect that is just his, all his, courtesy of some Auburn sorority girls. Play it. All right, man. Your time, brother. We do the first round is called the 3 and out, and then we do the second round is called the 2-minute warnings. 3 and out, dude. Top 3 stories, sports, go.
So the NFL draft was last night. The first round was last night, and so the first pick was Cam Ward, which was expected. Travis Hunter and Abdul Carter were 2 and 3, all expected. It's mainly a pretty predictable draft, pretty predictable first round. However, the big controversy and story is Shedeur Sanders, who was not drafted in the first round last night, the quarterback from Colorado, Deion Sanders' son. A lot of people thought that he may go 9 to the Saints or be drafted by the Browns, who, you know, all these teams need a quarterback, but they all decided to go elsewhere and address other positions instead of quarterback. And there's already been accusations of racist GMs don't want a black quarterback, and other people saying that that his son Shedeur is too flashy, and that's why they don't want him at quarterback. It's complete, total nonsense. I mean, if you look at the film, like, yeah, Shedeur has a very talented arm. He has physical attributes, but he took way too many meaningless sacks, and there was a lot of stuff that showed he's not quite ready to be a franchise quarterback yet. I think he'll be a good quarterback, but I don't know if teams are ready to pull the trigger on him being the franchise guy yet. And if you look at next year's quarterback class, there's a lot of studs in the next year's class of Arch Manning, Nico Imaleava. You also got Carson Beck, other guys. So next year's class is a lot better than this year's quarterback class. So I think these teams are holding out a year and then get their franchise quarterback next year. And I don't know. I get Shedeur he will be a good NFL quarterback. I just don't think he's the franchise guy yet that people are, you know, claiming him to be. And no, it's not because of his skin color, because he's Deion Sanders. Just stop. I'm tired of that narrative already happening. It's because he's not ready to be a franchise quarterback yet.
So is he a viable second round?
Yeah, he will for sure. I mean, he'll probably be gone within the first 10 picks of the second round, I would say. But, I mean, I think there's a lot of guys on the board that teams knew they weren't going to have in the second round. So they're going to get him in the first round knowing that they'll have Shedeur in the second round most likely. And by the way, there was a story earlier this week from an anonymous GM claimed that his meeting with Shedeur Sanders, the pre-draft meeting he had with him, was the worst he's ever had. Talked about how Shedeur was entitled, selfish, cocky, blamed his teammates, and did not leave a good impression on them at all. And then also ended it with saying, and the best part is he's not even that good. So, a lot of people were speculating maybe they put out that story on purpose so other teams would back off and they could draft him. But it appears not. He was probably telling the truth, which is probably why a lot of teams, passed on Shedeur. So that has been the main storyline of the first round. However, I will say the steals of the draft, I would say Jackson Dart at 25, I think is a big get for the Giants. I thought Jackson Dart was QB 1A with Cam Ward. I think he's going to be really good. So the Giants got a good one there. Malachi Starks at 27 is also a great one the Ravens got. But then I also say Jihad Campbell at 31, the Alabama defensive end. Obviously, I'm biased. I'm an Alabama fan. I get it. But I think he was one of the best sideline-to-sideline defenders in the draft. So the fact that the Eagles were able to get him at 31 is a bit crazy. And yet again, the Eagles get a monster defensive guy that somehow drops in the draft. I don't know how they keep doing it, but they keep pulling a rabbit out of the hat and getting these great guys late in the draft for nothing. So that was just another example with Jihad Campbell. But a lot of still good guys on the board for the second round tonight, though.
All right, and it extends through when? When's the draft over?
Goes until Saturday, all 7 rounds. And, I meant to mention, too, Jalen Milroe still on the board from Alabama. I would expect him and Shedeur Sanders will be the first 2 quarterbacks taken tonight in the top 10 rounds. Some people thought Jalen Milroe may go higher because people see or team see his legs and take a chance on him, but I don't think his passing is quite there yet. So we'll see. He will be gone tonight, though, in the second round, I'll say.
Milroe doesn't have the same diva personality that you got with Sanders.
No, not at all.
So do you think that plays in? I mean, are they equally yoked? I mean, I think that Milroe would be the better of the two, but are they equally yoked? And then the diva thing plays in?
Well, so I think Shedeur Sanders definitely has his passing is a bit better than Milroe's, I would say. Milroe has a cannon of an arm, but his medium range passing is not there. But if you look, I mean, teams have already commented on they've never evaluated a quarterback that has as good as legs as Milroe. Milroe ran like a 4.3 40.
Oh, wow.
So teams are probably going to take him for his athleticism and hope to make him an average passer. But the personality may come in. I mean, you're right. I think teams are looking at Shedeur Sanders and they don't want the diva personality. And also, too, what kind of shoulder parent is Deion Sanders going to be? Is he going to be if something happens with his son, he may just go out and blast a team on Twitter and be a headache? I don't know. But I would say that is playing into it for sure.
All right. Is that number 1 or is that 1 and 2?
That's number 1.
That's number 1. Wow. Okay. With only 3 minutes left to get the next 2 in, what you got?
So the Braves they're chipping away. The Braves are chipping away at coming back.
They've actually won a couple.
They're 10-14 now, and tied for last place. But the main story, unfortunately, with the Braves this week was something off the field, and it got a lot of headlines. So Ronald Acuna Jr., who won the MVP 2 years ago, who tore his ACL early last year, he's still rehabbing from that right now to come back hopefully this year. There was a past situations where the Braves coach pulled Ronald Acuna for not hustling. And this was like 3 or 4 years ago. But we had another instance last week where one of the Braves players hit a ball that he thought was a home run, and he admired it. He sat there instead of running. He watched it, and then it bounced off the wall, was not a home run, ended up being a single and what could have been like a triple. And the Braves coach afterwards claimed that he didn't see it and kind of have a no comment on it. And Acuna actually went on Twitter and tweeted something about how if that was me, I would have been benched. And with him being the star player, obviously that got a lot of headlines and a lot of unwanted publicity from the Braves side of things. So it's kind of split. Braves players and former alum are taking a side on Acuna. Is this him wanting a trade? Is he fed up with the coach of Snitker or not? I don't know. It's unfortunate that your star player is out there, making tweets like that while your team is, struggling to try to get back in the win column. But hopefully Acuna will be back in a couple of weeks from his ACL and that drama will, reside. But that unfortunately has been like the talk of baseball this week. Acuna making, airing his grievances out with his coach. It's not a good look.
Not a good look at all.
It's not a good look.
Nope. Never wise.
No, it's not wise. But hopefully he'll be back and playing well, and the drama will be gone when he's back. But yep, we'll see. The Braves play the Diamondbacks this weekend. Hopefully they can get some more wins in that series and keep chipping back to 500.
All right, don't get down to my kind of time management right now. You got about a minute and a half left. What you got for number 3?
NBA playoffs. So right now, a lot of the series are not really that close. However, the Knicks are 2-1 with the Pistons. Clippers are 2-1 with the Nuggets, and then the Lakers and the T-Wolves, and then the Rockets and the Warriors are both tied at 1-1 there. So you got LeBron on the Lakers, obviously, hopefully trying to get one last ring in before he retires and get to that number 5. The Lakers have a decent chance to make a run. They got a pretty good team, but then also the Warriors, Steph Curry as well, kind of in the same boat as LeBron, hopefully trying to make one last run before they both hang it up. But yeah, so NBA playoffs going on right now, some pretty good series, but a lot of it is the expected teams are kind of doing what everybody thought they would do. So it's kind of been uneventful so far. Hopefully it'll get a bit more interesting as we go.
All right, man. Is that it?
That is it.
Wow. Okay, so that's the 3 and out. We're going to come right back and have round number 2. We call it the 2-minute warning. That's where he runs anything and everything related to sports and sometimes the sports commentary. 2 minutes at a time. I got a timer and a buzzer. Y'all stay tuned. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. More JP on sports right after this. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio. Solid, conservative, and just plain right. Making common sense like a superpower. And that includes, by the way, common sense about sports. So just a reminder, we'll tell you more about them in a few minutes, but Inspire Advisors is the sponsor weekly of the JP on Sports segment. Round 2, JP on Sports, we do it called the 2-minute warning. I've got a timer and a buzzer, and he's got 2 minutes to go on each topic. Ready? Go.
Well, real quick, I forgot to tell.
There's no penalty play. There's no penalty play.
There was a funny moment to start off the draft last night. I meant to mention, this was in Green Bay. So former Packers linebacker Clay Matthews comes out and opens up the draft, and he goes, "Guys, I have a message from the president. I spoke to President Trump today. He wanted me to relay this message to you." He brought out a letter that said from President Trump, and it in big red or black letters it said, "The Bears still suck." And he goes, Trump says, "The Bears still suck," and the whole place went nuts.
Who is this doing this?
Clay Matthews, former Packers linebacker. I thought that was hilarious.
Oh, that's hilarious.
All right, well, 2-minute warning.
2-minute warning, ready, go.
So, Iamaleava, I've talked about this earlier this week, but this has been a big story that's continuing on. Nico Iamaleava. It's actually spilling over to his brother now, Madden Iamaleava. So, his brother was committed to Arkansas at a high school, signed an NIL deal, took NIL money, around $250,000.
Wow.
And then decides he's going to actually go to UCLA with his brother Nico. And after signing that contract, decommits and commits to UCLA. But Arkansas wasn't having it because Arkansas has now sued Madden Iamaleava and his family for $250,000 that they paid him before he ended up breaching his contract and leaving. So this brings up a question: could Tennessee do the same with Nico for a lot more money?
Yeah.
It certainly seems like it. Nico signed a 4-year contract with Tennessee and breached his contract by leaving.
Did he get money too?
Oh, yeah, like certainly millions of NIL dollars certainly at his time at Tennessee. And there was a tell-all article that came out this week from ESPN kind of detailing what went wrong with Nico in Tennessee. Apparently negotiations started after they lost to Ohio State in the playoffs. So this was an ongoing dispute that ended up boiling over right before spring practice, where apparently Tennessee offered more money, but Nico would have to show up to more, events and stuff, and Nico disagreed, and it was just them butting heads all along. Nico wasn't easy to work with. But bottom line is, I think this whole saga, drama, story is going to set the tone moving forward, that teams aren't going to put up with this crap.
No.
If you're going to breach a contract, then you'll get sued and you have to pay up whatever they paid you because you breached your contract. So
do they know how many 19-year-olds make $1 million? Do
exactly.
they know?
Mm-hmm. But they want $1 million more or $2 million more. It's never enough. So I don't know. I hope moving forward this does set a precedent, like I said, where teams end up sticking up for themselves and not letting kids bully them into paying more money than they agreed to.
And there's your buzzer. All right, reset the clock. 2 minutes, go.
So this actually is a perfect segue to the next topic here. So there's an NCAA antitrust lawsuit between college athletes and the NCAA over the last 10 years of lost NIL opportunities, per se, because kids who
lost NIL.
Yeah, because kids who could have made NIL money but didn't now are suing the NCAA. So it's $2.8 billion. And the kids, the athletes, actually have already won this lawsuit. It's already kind of been approved, but this will also allow schools to revenue share with student athletes in this upcoming school year. So schools will be allowed to share up to 22% of their athletic revenue with athletes. And so, like I said, this has been preliminarily approved, but it needs final approval, and that's actually been delayed because of roster limits. Something, a technicality needs to be worked out before it's been approved. But the bottom line is, it looks like it's about to be official that we're going to have revenue sharing between schools and athletes for this upcoming season.
Is that a settlement agreement, or is that
settlement agreement?
It's a judgment. Okay,
settlement agreement. Yeah, and it needs final approval, like I said. But the other question is, with revenue sharing, are the kids now employees of the school? You can't really call them. You can't really call them student athletes anymore.
Are they going to unionize?
Exactly. That's exactly it. There could be a union. And a couple of months back, or last football season, I talked to Coach Tuberville on my show about this, and he said that Chuck Schumer told him behind closed doors, "You're not going to have anything done. You're not going to have any hope of getting Democrat approval on anything, with NIL without a union for the college athletes." So it could potentially be a situation where athletes are going to say, "Look, we're employees. We're getting revenue, shared now, and we want a union." And that's just going to make college sports completely unrecognizable at that point.
Yeah.
It's just going to be another, a sub-pro, mess.
And shame on the NCAA and Congress for letting it grow to this point.
Oh, yeah. And the NCAA has been behind the 8 ball on this from the get-go. But, yeah, it looks like that's about to be official revenue sharing.
There's the buzzer. All right, 2 minutes. Set the clock and go.
So everybody remembers the Colin Kaepernick drama.
Who?
Yeah,
I don't remember him at all.
from a couple of years ago of kneeling at the flag or during the anthem, and then ended up getting cut. And now he's blaming it because he spoke out and the NFL is racist, and that's why I'm not in the league. Nobody really burst his bubble of you're not that good anymore. Okay, that's why you're not on a team. But so Colin Kaepernick's wife was actually out and about, and TMZ was talking to her, and apparently Colin Kaepernick is still ready. He's still ready for an NFL team to pick him up. He's still training, and he's still reaching out to NFL teams to sign him. And it's like, seriously, he hasn't woken up to reality yet.
How old is he now?
Gosh, I don't know. He's got to be in his high 30s. But I think it's funny because, like I said, he hasn't had this reality check. I think in his mind, he still thinks it's because of some sort of racism or some sort of I spoke out and they tried to silence me, when the bottom line is Colin Kaepernick is not good anymore. He's not good at football. That's why he was a third string when that whole saga happened of him kneeling at the anthem. So he wasn't some starter that was, sticking up. No, he was like a third string at that point anyways. He was already on his way out the door. So this is purely a performance, issue with him. But I don't know. I just thought that was kind of funny that apparently, his wife is saying that he's still reaching out to teams wanting to, find a spot and still training. I'm still in shape. Nobody wants you.
Does he have a job right now? What does he do?
I'm sure he's making money going around doing speaking engagements and talking about how everything under the sun is racist. And
you still have giant hair?
Yeah, I'm sure he does. Yes. Yeah, but I thought that was quite funny and humorous. Apparently, Colin Kaepernick is still holding out to be in the NFL one day. It's not going to happen.
Good luck with that.
Exactly.
I heard they might need a new water boy.
Yes, exactly.
Hit it. There it is. Okay. Reset the clock. And what time do we got? Do we have time?
We got time.
Overtime. Go.
So Justin Thomas won his first major in, I think it was, 7 years. He won, or not major, excuse me, his first PGA event in 7 years. He won the RBC Heritage event last week. The former Alabama golfer who has been he's been trying to get back into the mix, because he's gone through a bit of a drought and has been struggling. He won the PGA Tour in the past, so he's very capable of winning majors. However, now that he's gotten that monkey off his back and won an event finally after, 7 years, it could be in the mix. We talk about Rory McIlroy just won the Masters. We got the PGA Tour coming up next month, May 15th. Could we see JT, Justin Thomas, back in the mix to win another PGA Tour championship? I think him finally getting that win, that event, hopefully he'll be in the mix.
You ran that one all the way to the clock, man.
I did.
That's good clock management on your part.
Thank you.
All right. That's JP on Sports, brought to you by Inspire Advisors, and I'll tell you more about them in just a minute. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, going into the last segment of Friday. We'll be right back. Hey, all you Rightside ruffians out there, you are listening to Rightside Radio, solid conservative, just plain right. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just covering down on some major ground across the southeast U.S. of A. Y'all, I'm talking about this show. Whew. Goes like from Huntsville back over to Chattanooga. I'm talking about from Tuscaloosa back over to Gadsden. I mean all the way down to the loveliest little village on the plains we call Auburn, straight across the border from there to what we now get to call once again Fort Benning. Ha! Fort Benning. And then big old patches of North Georgia and Mississippi all thrown in just for good measure. I love that we call it Fort Benning again. I just do.
You know, we were looking through old pictures of my grandfather, and we found a picture of him at Fort Benning, and on it said, whatever, Fort Benning. And I'm like, I'm glad that it's back to Fort Benning.
I am too, very much so.
Now that we have to see those, it goes, Fort Liberty. Nope.
Well, it's just, okay. Anyway, bottom line is, yay, Fort Benning. Hey, by the way, I got to kind of step back and remind you guys, so JP on Sports every Friday. And some good text coming in on that too, by the way. JP on Sports is brought to you by Inspire Advisors. So you hear their ads running, but let me just tell you about them personally. Inspire Advisors is very cool. I mean, Paul Breyer and his team at Inspire Advisors, they specialize in what is known as biblically responsible investing, meaning they can help you grow your bottom line and then also analyze who you're investing in so that you're actually proud of the companies themselves and not just throwing money into the market. I mean, biblically responsible investing keeps you in a position of knowing that you're not investing in companies that support all the things that right-side ruffians don't want to be a part of, right? So biblically responsible investing, Inspire Advisors. You can find out more about them. You can make an appointment with Paul. And I'm just telling you, they are real and they do good work. And you can find them at their website, Inspire Advisors, www.moneypatternwealth.com. That's Inspire Advisors, www.moneypatternwealth.com, and tell them you heard about it on Rightside Radio. I'd appreciate that very much. All right, let's get a few text messages, then I'm going to cover a little bit of ground on some stuff we got left in our third dipper. Gary from Lester, Alabama says, I love the sports updates and the briefs.
Thank you, Gary. Appreciate it.
Shabam. There you go. Lisa from Huntsville says, I guess Colin Kaepernick is like Cousin Eddie. He's holding out for a management position. Worthy of a laugh track. Worthy. Dave from Capshaw giving us the inside scoop. Colin K is 37 years old. I mean, the dude's past his prime.
Yeah, give it up.
For football.
Oh, yes. I mean, he was past his prime a couple of years ago.
I mean, I like to think that I could still hang, you know what I'm saying? But I'm pretty sure I'm not going to the combines and doing anything.
Nah.
Never going to happen. Matt from Madison says, okay, he's not a fan of Governor Ivey.
Well, no, he said it's harder to hate on someone we refer to as Maymoss. That's what he said,
Yeah. And then John from Lexington, South Carolina says, with all the liberals from D.C. and Colorado going to Huntsville, wouldn't a purple Huntsville help invigorate the conservatives in the state? You know, it might. And people need to think about that too, because what you're looking at here is some of the politics coming in could blend the area. Then again, I mean, they may get down here and finally get to feel like they can be what they always were, but they weren't allowed to up in D.C. Who knows? I don't know. But I do believe, though, that the culture down here does a lot more for people who are moderate or purple or undecided in their politics to lean conservative as opposed to not. But we'll see. Interesting dynamic.
We'll see. I was a little worried about Huntsville turning purple with all the people coming here, but the last election, it was still strongly red. You know, I think it was on the verge. So I don't know. I feel like Huntsville will still hold strong with the folks they got up there.
Yeah, absolutely. John from Huntsville, by the way, checked in and says that Colin Kaepernick ought to try bowling.
Do something else.
Pick another sport, dude.
Pickleball or something.
Hey, by the way, shameless plug for Rightside Media, the parent company of Rightside Radio. If you're not familiar, Rightside Media does a lot more than radio. I mean, this is only one of our gigs. So Rightside Media, the parent company, has Rightside Radio as one production. We podcast that show, and then we also have 5 other video podcasts. There have been several new editions of our podcast come out just this week. The latest edition of my own podcast came out Wednesday. It's called The Right Philosophy. It went up Wednesday afternoon. Thursday, we got a new round of the Liberty Minute with former Navy SEAL, I just lost my train of thought. I'm so sorry, Jared Hudson. And then today, the latest edition of Right Click with Birdman. And Right Click, by the way, bases its conservative commentary out of the gaming and high-tech environment. And he's got some pretty amazing stuff about one of the platforms called Discord. What do you know about Discord, by the way?
Oh, I've used Discord since middle school. A lot of the stuff he talked about, I didn't even know what's going on, so it's pretty crazy.
Yeah.
It's pretty nuts.
You put some shorts out on his video, too, didn't you?
Oh, they're in the making.
They're in the making right now?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. But yeah, you may be amazed to find out if your kids are on Discord, like you just heard a minute ago. JP was on it back in middle school. I mean, that's just a communication platform, right? You can talk to people through it and all that kind of stuff.
It's like somewhere where gamers, while they're gaming, can go and be in a voice chat and talk to each other and stuff, and it has like group chats and all that. So yeah.
And there's stuff that's happening in there that ain't good.
Yep. CEO had to resign because of it. So
really,
yeah, it's a mess.
Wow. Okay, anyway, that's Birdman's Right Click podcast. If you got anybody in your environment, or maybe you yourself, and you're a techie or you're a gamer, and you're also a conservative, there's your podcast. He does a great job putting it together. Yellow Dog Mike checking in. Pray tell, what ranting tripe does he have for us now? Let's see. He says, boy howdy, Trump is crawfishing on China. He chickened out. Pete's having a makeup room set up at the Pentagon. Vance is using eyeliner. You're worried about trans folks? You guys are buku dinky dow. It's a nom thing you wouldn't understand. I do understand. And by the way, good try. And I hope he notices that I pronounced it correctly, because I know exactly what he was saying. Yellow Dog, I don't know that anybody can cram as much into one text message. He goes down, he's usually off topic, and he always goes down a list of talking points, most of which have already been debunked before he even texts them in.
Yeah, it's a whole lot of nothing.
JT Lacey Springs says, since Trump got elected, my hayfield is Republican. Oh, his hayfield's growing reds. By the way, if I were in Afghanistan right now, I'd say you had a poppy field going, so be careful. Have you ever, by the way, this is a total aside. Have you seen the original Wizard of Oz with Judy Garland? And the whole
Yes.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember the part where they are within sight of the Emerald City, and they get out to the field, and all of a sudden the witch goes, poppies will make them sleep.
Mm-hmm.
It was an opium field.
Yeah.
They were running through the poppies. Well, it's basically the wicked witch was getting them stoned on opium, and they were falling asleep in the middle of the field.
I do remember that, but at the time I definitely did not. I did not connect the dots when I was a kid watching
As a kid, I was like, why are the poppies made to go to sleep? Just watch the show, son. Okay, Dad.
You'll understand later.
Yeah. Well, I did when I went to Afghanistan, and there were these beautiful red fields. You're like, holy crap. I'll never forget one time we're on I'm chasing a rabbit. I was on a long-range patrol. We were probably 2 days out from, the hub of where we operated. We were remote anyway, so our safe house basically. And I'm in the lead vehicle. We always drove with civilian vehicles. And so I'm in I'm in the Toyota truck, and we're driving through a gully, and I've got these special forces guys in the vehicle behind me, and all of a sudden one of them comes on the radio and he goes, "Hey sir, look to your left and right and tell me if you see what I see." And I had been aware, but I had not dialed in on what the plants were. But we're passing by these beautifully irrigated fields with, stone walls and everything just cared for. And there were marijuana plants that were growing that were about 10 feet tall. It was like corn. It was just a field of pot plants growing like nothing I've ever. It was about one of the most finely cultivated fields I'd ever seen in all of Afghanistan.
It's nuts to think about that. That I guess you don't think about how much distribution or whatever comes out of Iraq and Afghanistan of poppy and all that. It's
It's really something. It was in fact at one point I think that poppy was the number one producing plant. Believe it or not, cotton used to be. Cotton, they called it, there's a place called the Spinzar factory where I was. Spinzar means white gold. And so the Spinzar factory was the hub of economic commerce for northern Afghanistan for years until the Taliban tore it apart. And the war with the Soviets didn't help either.
Yeah.
But after that, it was poppy.
Go figure.
Got to feed the world drug trade, right?
Yeah, I guess so.
That's how you feed terrorism. Hey, by the way, I'm gonna digress for a few more minutes. We got a few minutes left in the show, and I got to tell you, there's something happening right now. So we get really irritated with judges. All right, I'm totally changing the subject. We get really irritated with judges. But how about when judges actually break the law? I don't mean like rule opposite of where we want them to rule. I mean actually break the law. We have 2 judges who have just been arrested in the last 24 hours. Now, these are not federal district court judges. They're local circuit court judges at the state level. But one of them, I mean, talk about it. I don't know which story's crazier. You've got one in New Mexico, and you've got one in, where is she? Minnesota, I think? Hang on a second, or Michigan. Wisconsin, I'm sorry. So here's the first story, if you're not familiar. Wisconsin, a Milwaukee County Circuit Court judge named Hannah Dugan, who's been on the bench for a number of years, was arrested today and charged with obstruction of official proceedings. What did she do? So apparently she's opposed to the idea of ICE arresting illegal immigrants. And as they are wont to do, ICE will get notice of one of the detainees that they know is they're trying to locate showing up in the court system because the subpoenas and the court documents are public record. And so ICE shows up and they want to arrest this guy. Well, this Wisconsin judge, she literally told the ICE agents they could not arrest him in her courtroom. They had to go outside to the lobby. And then she snuck him out the back and hid him in the jury room. I mean, completely tried to just do an end around, and she's been arrested now. The other one was a judge in New Mexico. I think we mentioned him last week. And I'm trying to think of what his name is. Maybe I'll find it here if I can scroll real quickly. But this particular judge, kind of wild. I think his name is Judge Canio, and they're both Democrats. Judge Canio was arrested because he had a known Tren de Aragua illegal immigrant living in his house. I don't mean like visiting or mowing his grass. I mean, old boy was living in his house. They got social media pictures showing them, going to the gun range together and all. It's crazy. And what you got?
There's just a lot of other weird pictures too.
I saw one that showed him like with no pants on, and that was CGI. I understand. So, if you look, he has 6 toes in the picture. It's kind of weird. But yeah, so 2 judges have been arrested. All right. I mean, Shag Nasty the Atheist is checking in saying that Judge Hannah Dugan is an American hero. Shag, come on. You know better. But what we're looking at right now is the judiciary is really taking hits. And it's kind of interesting, and it's something I'm going to look into. And listen, I'm not for this. All right. I'm not saying that I'm not about the idea of let's break the judiciary. It's not what I'm talking about. But the lovely Charlene sent me something that I'm going to have to look into over the weekend. Newt Gingrich tweeted out, he said, those that are upset by the emerging dictatorship of district court justices behaving as though they were president ought to read the Judiciary Act of 1802. Said that Jefferson and his party completely revised the court system and abolished a series of Federalist judges they deemed illegitimate, which is a warning to the current out-of-control judiciary. That, I would say, is like the nuclear option. Let us not go there. I don't want to go there. But what I'm also really tired of is overreach to the point where you can tell that some judges, now some just rule we don't like it, right? Some just rule we don't agree. There are those, though, you can see the preconceived notions in their rulings because you can see what their life is like outside the courtroom, and you know for a fact that what's happening is they brought their predispositions into the courtroom. It's not good. We'll talk about plenty of that probably on Monday. Let's go ahead and take a break right now. We're on the last break of the day. Phil Williams, Friday afternoon. Y'all stay tuned. We will be right back. And we are back. Phil Williams, Rightside Radio, solid conservative and just plain right. Just making common sense like a superpower. John's got the grades in, and I will say all of y'all have an amazing weekend. I hope your Friday was good. Most of y'all are on the road right now, headed to the house. Some of y'all are about to start the night shift, so in that case, blessings on your evening. But nonetheless, we appreciate this audience more than you could possibly know. John from Huntsville says, JP gets a B-, and he knows why.
I do.
Phil gets an A+ for his outstanding performance, which means today's co-winners are obviously John Rogers and John Wall with an A++ for their equally spectacular performances. Wow. Congratulations. And by the way, JP, I bet tonight you're going to have a nightmare about people trying to get you to say War Eagle, and you'll only say War Eagle in your sleep without even knowing it.
I doubt it. Don't think so.
Hey, let me jump on the phones real quick. I do believe he's there. Jeff Rowe from Indiana. Hey, buddy, how you doing?
I'm just crossing into Kentucky, so I'm doing real well.
Wow. Wow, man, you are like flying. That's good. That's great.
It don't hurt a thing, does it?
Yeah, on a Friday afternoon, you get home earlier than usual. That's great. Good stuff, man. What do you think about all this? By the way, what do you think about my phrase, having a God-fearing gunslinger for a governor?
Well, that's what I want to talk about.
Okay.
When you wrote your monologue, was you looking in the mirror? Because you had to been.
Oh, stop. All right. No.
You was looking in the mirror. Phil, you're the only guy, or you're a very, very rare breed. You're one of the very fewest politicians that I can say has his best interest. Doesn't have his best interest as being a politician, because you work for the people, and you want term limits and everything else. You cut your own. You're not looking at it as what government can do for me. Is what.
Well, brother, I'm honored by that, but I appreciate it. And if I was looking in the mirror, all I was doing was saying, Phil, what kind of governor do you want? That's all I was doing.
Yeah, and unless you shut me off here, I'm going to take over your show for just a few seconds. And ask everyone that's listening to the show or watching the show on any platform.
Oh my gosh!
If you think that Phil Williams would be the best governor for Alabama, just type in a simple yes.
Listen,
JP, if you would see how many votes you get on this thing for on a Monday, I'd sure like to know.
Okay. So first of all, I love you in spite of yourself. Thank you very much.
Jeff, I think, is the first one to make Phil uncomfortable on his own radio show.
I knew it would, and probably Miss Williams is ready to shoot me right now. Probably be my guess.
She's probably going to get home. She's going to go, do not let that man call your show anymore.
Yeah, because when I was running for office and everything, I got some death threats, and that was credible.
Oh, yeah.
Because my wife told me that if I ever run again, she was going to kill me, and that's a credible threat.
and that was a death threat right there at home. Oh, wow.
Yes, that was the most credible threat I ever got.
Well, listen, you know what? God has not called me back into active politics right now. I get to talk about it, but the text lines are lighting up. This is wonderful. All right, brother.
Yeah, I knew they would.
That's I know you. It's inflammatory. This is clickbait. That's all it is. All right, man. Listen, I gotta take it to the house. But you be safe on the road, and I'm not letting you take over my show anymore. That's it. No more.
Okay, well, one time's enough. You'll see what the results are here.
Oh, my gosh. Jeff Rowe from Indiana.
Weekend, Phil.
See you, brother. Take care.
Thank you.
Holy cow. All right. Well, listen, I love this audience, and I think y'all know it. And the honor of a lifetime is getting to sit here every day and just engaging with y'all and laying truth out there where it is, solid, conservative, and just plain right. And remember, there are more of us than there are of them. God is still very much on his throne. Y'all stay in the fight. We'll see you Monday.